listening to Kate of Gaia on Critical Mass Radio. The game is up. Now, it's our turn.
Now it's our turn indeed. Hey everybody, welcome to Outside the Box. Here on Monday nights, live, yours truly, Kate of Gaia. And of course we have the magnanimous Santa Bonacci and the beyond wondrous Kurt Kallenbach. So we're going to have some fun tonight, and I've been chomping at the bit since Saturday night with this one. But it's going to be a good time. So I don't know, let's just start where we finished talking Saturday night, gentlemen, and let's see where we go. So, Santo, how are you tonight?
Very, very well, and much anticipating today's show. So I've prepared a lot of folks to tune in, and I've also told people to have pen and paper because you'll be kicking yourself if you don't. Because even though Kurt speaks our language very, very close. Well, it's
we speak the same one, and it's going to come high, hard, and fast tonight. So that I know. We're just going to be blurring people. So
that's the point.
Yeah.
It's too fast. It's just too fast, and you want to have a notebook just to jot down a few things because you're going to have so many aha moments. when someone joins the dots for you, and you just watch it, and you just go, now I get it.
Oh, look, it's a Batmobile. Connect the dots.
Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, man, it's going to be a good one. Kurt, how are you doing?
Am I live now, finally?
I hope so. I can hear your voice unless you're talking from beyond the grave.
Yeah, my lips don't even move. When I'm speaking, my lips don't even move. That's what's so funny about this.
Oh, funny.
Hey, by the way, Santos, thank you very much for saying about a pen and paper, because I'm going to ask some people to actually draw out a couple things real quick so they can get a better visual. This is going to make more sense if they can actually see it on paper sometimes. And really, what the first thing I want to say tonight is that anything that I say tonight is because of my wife. What I mean by that is that without her support in every possible way you can imagine, none of this stuff would have been possible. I mean, nobody could find out what I found without having somebody like my wife around, and it would have been impossible. So I'd like to tell people that if it wasn't for her, if she didn't give me the time to do this, what we're talking about tonight would not be available. Maybe yet. At some point it would have been available, but not yet. So.
I understand where you're coming from, brother. I'm in the same situation with my wife. I concur with you, and I have to say the same with my wife. I wouldn't be a half a man, without my wife. I remember before I met her 7 years ago, I was if I'm not, angry now, I was very angry, so I've got her to thank very much for most of my advancement.
So thank you, Debbie, and I believe everybody after tonight will be thanking Debbie. So how much actual time do we have? Because I'm just gonna can I just get going?
Yeah, we got 2 hours on air and 1 hour rollover.
Okay,
so we got 3 hours. Don't worry, it's gonna come so high, hard, and fast that we probably only need about 20 minutes anyway. So
yeah.
It's all good.
Well, we have the ability to time travel now, so that's okay.
Well, exactly. And this is kind of where I want to start things off, if you're cool with that, because as most listeners are, I use that term so the others at the table here have heard on more than one occasion my story of how I was time jumped. I talked about this yesterday at the little meet and greet we had, and where a document that had been served on the night of February 11th to Sue that I saw, and it was actually in the safe of a friend of mine who happens to be a private bailiff, had magically changed from the scan that I got on Monday that I'd sent out to all the people that were involved, showing the mistake on the actual document, and lo and behold, on the Thursday, it was corrected. And the only way that can happen is a time jump, because documents just don't magically change inside of a safe. I'm sorry, but I'd already known of this stuff anyway, that it's not only possible, it's an everyday thing, right? When you start understanding linear time and toroidal fields and whatnot. So you will not surprise anyone sitting at this table. So let's have at her.
Here we go. So we're going to start with the calendar. We're going to start with the time machine itself. And I'm going to use me as an example on every single situation, so just put yourself in my place every time I say something. So, Curtis Richard Kallenbach was born September 19th, 1960, A.D., Anno Domini. And that's critical because the character, and I want to be very clear about this, the character known as Curtis Richard Kallenbach, born September 19th, 1960, is a character in a story. In fact, it's his story. You know it as history. So the character in history that I'm speaking about is Curtis Richard Kallenbach. In fact, that character is the subject of his story. And if you can think of like a Harry Potter or something like that being the subject of that story, now you got it. Now you understand that this particular story is about the character known as Curtis Richard Kallenbach. And that character was born in a time frame of Anno Domini. What is Anno Domini? For most of you that don't know this.
Hey Curtis, before you get too deep, there's one thing I did want to mention to you before we started this. And you familiar with the term Toto Genrerie?
No, go ahead.
In full character. It's that's where I break down the allegories of movies like Wizard of Oz and you name it. I'll show you the name game and all the rest of it in every movie. But Dorothy and Toto, Dorotheos, Door of God, and Toto Genrerie in your full character. But here's something, and being a musician, I have my own publishing. But I was very familiar with copyright law, and I think this might pique your interest. Anytime somebody wants to copyright something, you cannot copyright the title, only the body of the work.
Or the idea. Yeah, the idea you can't copyright.
Well, see, like you got songs that have different titles, or the same title with different lyrics. But I want you to put it in the allegorical context of what you're talking about right now in terms of the story. Think of it as a book, right? Now, we have the title that is being copyrighted. But it's not really, it's the body of the work, our body, because this is going to tie back into the DNA when we get there, so yeah. Carry on.
Well, and that's a beautiful, beautiful way to explain what I am about to say anyway. The character or the title, the body of that work, is your travels. It's you being the journalist, journaling the travels of that character. And that the journal itself creates a file. And of course in grade school or kindergarten you're always being yelled at to get in single file. Well, that's exactly what it is. It's a file. And that file is the book of your life, or the book of that character's life. You got to really distinguish between, and it's hard. I've been doing this now for about 3 or 4 months, but it's hard to distinguish yourself, your actual I am, from that particular character, because we've lived it. I've lived it for 53 years up until the time I decided that that is not me. So anyway, let's get back to the concept of time travel. His story began September 19th, 1960 A.D. Anno Domini. Anno Domini, what is that? That's the year of our Lord. Well, wait a minute here. If I claim to be that character in the year of our Lord, I'm doing an awful lot of things that I didn't know I was doing. Number one, by claiming that character in that particular year, I'm claiming to have a Lord. I'm claiming to be subject to that New Testament. Of course, what does testament mean? It means disposition of personal property. That New Testament, that new covenant that I had that's not one of my deals. I didn't make that deal. But when I claim that character as myself, I am automatically subject to the rules of that Jesus fish. Curtis Richard Kallenbach, the baptismal name, is the Jesus fish. That's the character within his story, the story of Jesus, the whole place that Jesus existed. Now, when was the Anno Domini calendar actually put in place? It was put in place in 1582 by Pope Gregory VIII. Santos, you had a nice comment about him, but we don't have to.
Can we have a Jesus, please? Oh, and just let you guys know, we have Peter in the call as well. Good to have you on board, Peter. Oh, someone's got their...
All right. Hey, what's up,
there
brother?
You are.
What's up, brothers and sisters and everybody else?
and me?
Yeah, okay, yeah,
what
that's
the
all
hell
good.
are you?
Well, hey, do I have to genuflect now or what?
Oh, it's all good.
Only if you stay in character.
I'm in character.
Yeah, I've been called a character before. And a couple other things.
Here's the thing. So his story is not your story. And the Anno Domini character, if you have a piece of paper, you can draw this out and it's going to start making sense. That story, that time frame, is very finite. It goes from the year 1 to the year 2013. That's its limitation. That's the parameters in which that particular character exists. And that's the Jesus timeline. And, of course, again, to claim that character, you're also claiming to be subject to the Christ character or Jesus in particular. Now, here's the deal. What calendar does the World's Elite use? The World's Elite use the Hebrew calendar. And I have the Hebrew calendar up, so I'm going to go ahead and plug this in because people have to realize the Hebrew calendar starts at the year 0 and goes all the way up to currently AM Anno Mundi 5774. What does Anno Mundi mean? It means the year of the world. So they've already separated these two systems. One's the year of our Lord and one's the year of the world. The World's Elite use the year of the world, the Anno Mundi calendar, and that goes right now from 0 to 5774. If you draw a line right now on a piece of paper, call it a timeline, and you draw a 0 on the left as the starting point, and you draw AM 5774 at the far right. It could go all the way across the paper. The reason I say that is make it long enough because you're about to draw a subset. So that's the Anno Mundi calendar from 0 to 5774 AM or AM 5774. Now, here's what's interesting. When you use the Anno Domini calendar, it starts at the year 1 to the year 2013. So think about get down there by the 0 and put a 1. This is a whole separate timeline, folks. A whole separate timeline. It's parallel. In fact, it's a parallel universe. So here's the thing, from 1 to 2013. The interesting thing about 1 to 2013 is it fits completely inside of the Hebrew calendar. Now so it's self-contained. It's self-contained, but within their world, which means that it can be controlled from that world. So from the Hebrew calendar world, AM Anno Mundi to the and I want to describe something here because my attention deficit is phenomenal right now. Here we go. Let me actually position this so you can understand it. I am sitting right now in front of my computer. And according to the World's Elite, I'm sitting in this chair. So I'm physically in this chair. So I'm here in space. And according to them, it's, let me just see what the exact date is. Today is, according to the Anno Domini calendar, the 4th of November, 2013. Well, the Hebrew calendar says it's the 1st of Kislev, 5774. So here I am sitting in this chair, according to Anno Domini, physically in 2013. Well, here's what's interesting about that. The World's Elite are sitting in the same exact chair in the year 5774, which is a discrepancy of 3,761 years, which means if I choose the character Curtis Richard Kallenbach, born in September 19th, 1960, that character in the very same space, in this exact same chair, is 3,761 years in the past. This is a time machine. This is actually the device they use to place you in his history, and where you can't even reach out to the present tense because you're claiming to be that very character born within that time frame. This is the best prison system ever devised. They have you lost in space and time. And think about this. If I'm claiming to be that 2013 character, how in the world can I speak to somebody in 5774? It is absolutely impossible. So when you're in their court system and they're dealing with, and all their paperwork says is using the Anno Domini calendar, I mean, they're dealing with something that they can change. They can change the paperwork, which means they change the past, which means they change the present. So just like Kate actually experienced, they went back in time changed the documents, and now in the present tense, it's exactly what they need it to be. And that's how crazy this stuff is. And I know this is very difficult for most people to grasp the concept of time travel, because you think that it's a physical thing, that you physically travel someplace, but you don't. You actually, all they have to do is use the machine known as the Gregorian calendar that was put in place by Pope Gregory. And here's what's funny about this, is Loyola, Ignatius Loyola, the one that began what most people understand to be the Jesuits, or the Society of Jesus. And this is important, because all the characters born on the Gregorian calendar are part of that society. When Robert Menard talks about the Law Society, that's a whole different place. That's a whole different situation. The Society of Jesus exists within the Anno Domini calendar, and everybody is the Jesus fish within that frame of reference. And the sad thing is when you go into their court, you're already convicted of something. What is the conviction? The conviction, what does the word conviction actually mean? Conviction means a strong belief in something. And so you go in there using the baptismal name in the Jesus fish time frame, and you have a conviction that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. Sadly, in the United States, the First Amendment says what? Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. In other words, when you choose to join that denomination, you have now extricated yourself from the protections of the Constitution. The very character, Curtis Richard Kallenbach, has no constitutional protections whatsoever, because it's a fictional character in a two-dimensional realm. It's on a piece of paper. It's on a page, for crying out loud. So the whole structure of this thing is, you've got to realize that what's going on, I mean, seriously what's going on, is that they're sitting someplace in time that you cannot get to. And here's the key, and I'm going to be going into this right now. You can't get there except by special appearance in spirit. In spirit. That's the only way you can show up in their courts, because you're long dead and buried. That character actually is long dead and buried. And what you are is you are a DNA relative to the character that's long since passed. And all you're doing there is acting as fiduciary, representative, whatever, to the character that is long since passed. I'm talking 3,761 years. For me, in my case, what's really funny is right now that character, Curtis Richard Kallenbach, born in September 19th, 1960, is 4,014 years old. That character.
Yeah, this explains fully the copyright nature, right? I want you to touch on. We were talking about this concept the other night, the concept of what is truly an original and what is a copy, because we got talking about placenta and hair droppings and all the rest of it, and claiming salvage and vessel and whatnot. So let's try to bring that around to get people to understand what a copyright is and what an original is. And I've got my 2 cents to throw in here as we go, but we touched on that so well the other night. I just wanted to get back there. That'll help clarify a lot of stuff.
All right, I'll draw a picture. Okay. I'm Michelangelo. Actually, I'm not, but I'm Michelangelo, and I decide I want to create a new work of art. And so what I do is I go out and get this giant rock, and it's sitting before me just as a giant rock. The first thing I want to do is go out and find the model that I want to use to create. So I go find a gentleman or a David or whatever, and what I do, that model is actually considered the genuine article. It's the real thing. It's the genuine article. And so I let David or whoever my model is stand there before me. I chisel away the rock, and in the end, what I have made is called an original. So the model himself he's the genuine article. He's the genuine aspect. But what I create as the artist is the original. What does original mean? Original means first copy. That's all it means. So when people start using the word original issue, this, and they're talking about the first copy. They're not talking about the genuine article. Here's what's so crazy about the difference between that in the courtroom. When they're dealing with an original issue, in other words, a creation, something that was made from or that appears similar to, they're dealing with the first copy. They are not dealing with the genuine article. Let's make it simple. When a child is birthed, when a child is actually arrives, the DNA, biological, living, breathing, soul-filled entity, that's the genuine article. That's the genuine thing. But when they create something, a birth certificate or whatever, that's the first copy. That's an original. They have nothing in common. In fact, the original could be made out of stone, for crying out loud. So it has nothing to do with reality. An original has nothing to do with reality. And here's one step further. So you have the genuine, which is the actual, which is called truth. And then you have the original. It's the first copy made from the genuine. And then you have representations of it after that. So when you make copies of the original, you actually have representations. So you see how far removed you can get from the actual. So I'm sitting here before a computer. I'm the genuine article. I have something I want to add to what we said Saturday night. When you walk into the courtroom, remember you're not there in space and time. You're actually a representative. Remember I said a representation. You're a representative of an original. You're not even a representative of the genuine.
Yeah, dead men tell no tales. You're a ghost.
Absolutely. And so what's funny about this is most people don't realize that without the genuine article, where does it go? It defaults directly to summary judgment.
Yep.
Until the live man shows up, it always defaults to summary judgment. Why? Because without the genuine article, they don't have what they need. Until the genuine article shows up, it always falls to summary because there's nobody there. There's the real thing's not there. Well, we know it's there, but because of the time-space problem, it's not there. In fact, it's impossible for it to be there. So
well, yeah, and just keep it wide open for people. You got to stop thinking in the physical sense here. You've got to get ethereal on this, or you're going to miss it. Now, take for example, to go right back to like say photo ID. What you've got is a copy of an original of the genuine article. So it takes it even further down the line. But this whole time aspect, and I knew it had to come full circle given what I went through. That was too big a clue to miss. A little too obvious. So this is how it's coming about.
Well, real quick, but when Ignatius Loyola, the only thing he ever wanted to do when he created the Society of Jesus, known as the Jesuits, was his whole intent was to capture the soul. That was his whole intent, to capture the soul of man. And of course, I don't know what his motive was. I mean, it seems like it could be pretty horrible, but he's done it. They did it. They figured it out. They figured it out, and we'll get into that tonight. But so Ignatius, the whole Society of Jesus, the people don't realize it, but they always talk about wanting to get back to the Republic. After the Civil War, we lost the Republic. No, the people don't realize that the Republic that was created was not what they want. I mean, that whole Pledge of Allegiance and all that stuff, one nation under God and to the Republic. That Republic is a Jesuit Republic. That the republic that is talked about in the Pledge of Allegiance is a Jesuit republic, just like every other American republic Ignatius and the Jesuits created in Central America and South America. When I talk about America, and people need to stop using this term, when I speak about America, I speak about it just like Spain speaks about it. They speak about America meaning North, Central, and South. That is America. And so don't think that you're not part of Mexico or you're not part of Bolivia or whatever. When you speak and when you claim to be an American, you're claiming to be of Spanish descent. Because when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, he claimed it for Spain, and the District of Columbia, District of Columbus, the District of Columbia is a Spanish enclave that was created 100% as a Jesuit republic for the Vatican. The District of Columbia is actually the Congress, the Senate is a Roman Senate. The Senate, you believe, is for the United States. Come on, folks, wake up. This is a Roman Senate that is 100% behind Rome. You have two aspects going on in the District of Columbus right now. District of Columbia. Sometimes I forget to put it back the way most people recognize it. You have Roman civil law, and you have the Ecclesia subject with the Society of Jesus fish. Those are the only two things going on in the District of Columbia. There is no other form of law there, and they both fall under the Vatican. So you guys take your pick.
I was going to say, and to back you up on the spiritual aspect of the capturing, I've long referred to Washington D.C. as Washington direct current to grab that one aspect of energy, like the AC alternating current, which is, for me, that's the true singularity.
Well, I mean, there's I want to explain baptism so people understand why it's so. Baptism is so important. The concept of baptism, because that was what that's what he did to actually capture souls. The concept of baptism, nobody really knows what that means, and I'm not trying to diminish anybody's knowledge on this, but the problem is, what is baptism? Baptism is a process of purification. But how is it? What does that mean? You're purified through the separation or distillation of the vapor from the matter, or the spirit from the matter. So the concept of baptism is actually the separation of the spirit or the vapor. Think about it, a distilled spirit. I mean, but they use it all the time. We talk about these things all the time. But baptism is actually the separation of the spirit from the physical matter.
Yeah, and separation of church and state.
That's exactly what it is. And you know what? Hasn't everybody been screaming about that since the beginning? Hey, man, we got to keep separation. They did that in 1933. They got it down to a science, and they were able to do it with the combination of the birth certificate. Well, whatever it is, and the collusion with the hospitals, or what I call the hospitality houses of the Knights of Malta, the Knights Hospitallers. Everything that's going on in the hospital that's step one to the baptismal process. Curtis Richard Kallenbach is a baptismal name that is specific to a baptismal character, that is specific to the Anno Domini calendar, that is specific to the Society of Jesus. Curtis Richard Kallenbach is a Jesus fish within the rules, the canon of that society, the Society of Jesus. It's that simple. All through the process of baptism.
And then again, look at the allegorical separation of church and state with the apostolic letter, and of course HSBC kicking Rome out of the banks. You're seeing that, again, I look at things allegorically, and I'm watching things manifest on a very, very funny spiritual level. You had, I don't know if you've heard any of the stuff recently, but effectively with the apostolic letter, I call that the apocalypse. They're playing out Revelations, right? This is what's playing out right now. Was the lifting of the veil of all of the corporate protection and immunities from lawyers, judges, etc. Right? And they're all shitting themselves. But I know this is what it's leading to. And of course, HSBC. There's that BC thing again. And where does that HS come in sometimes? Anyway, yeah, it's just a coincidence. Look away. Well, but they kicked Rome out of all of their banks. So there's the whore of Babylon commerce in London, and you got Papa Patriarchal in Rome. There's your church and state. Right? And that, for me, was the allegorical separation of that unholy alliance, or the separation of church and state working in cahoots, where the bastard child in the District of Columbia is now left without a daddy. So we've got some really neat stuff happening, and I know this whole thing that you're talking about was the lifting off of that ethereal binding for this to finally come through. It's beautiful.
Well, who said this? And you know what? Who said, "I will build my church upon this rock"? Who said that?
Oh, that might have been Peter.
Okay, now look at this. Where does Peter fall into all this? But before you answer that, look at this. I will build my church upon this rock. What was the rock?
Well, I would always go immediately to the pineal gland, but that's just me.
The rock was Jesus.
Yeah, that's the Christ conscious, right?
There you go. So I will build, think about the construct itself. I will build my church upon this rock. Every character, every person that claims the baptismal character is a brick in that particular wall to that particular abbey, mission, whatever you want to call that building, the church structure, that you claim to be one of the bricks in the wall of that structure, because the baptismal name is the brick. It's the very thing that they're using to build. And the word, of course, everybody has to know what the concept of paradise. What does paradise mean? Well, it's in its most ancient of all definitions. Paradise is a Persian term, and it means walled around. Think about this. You want to be in paradise? Are you effing kidding me?
You can use the full expletive on this show. It's okay.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Thank you.
Yeah, I know that was so pathetic.
Don't hold back now. Come on. This is outside the box, and I'd love to hear Santo jumping in on the Juke Peters
so think
thing.
about this. So think about. And that's the sickest part of all. Everybody claims to want to be part of paradise. Paradise is the prison itself. It's walled around. That's paradise, folks.
And on a lighter note, hang on a sec. What other radio show will you actually have a radio host give a guest shit for not using the F-bomb? Seriously. Jump in, whoever's jumping in.
I was sickened that I even said that.
Oh, it's awesome.
I've never said effing in my life.
There you go.
Anyway.
It's all good. Welcome home.
Thank you. It's the hero's journey at this point. The whole thing, though, like I said, the baptismal name, there's so many things about the baptismal name. Let me draw another picture. If anybody has a pen and paper, you need to do this. Draw yourself an archway, just like you would think of as an arch through, a doorway, an actual arch. You want to know who your arch enemy is? I know there's a lot of wordplay here, but that's all this is. All the words are just spells that bind you. You're spellbound, for crying out loud. Here it goes. And I'm using my name, so just put your name in here. You got an arch. On the left side of the arch, let's say at about 10 o'clock up there where it starts to make the curve, put in your given name, in my case, Curtis. On the right side at about 2 o'clock, you put in the surname or family name, Kallenbach. Well, here's what's interesting about this. Perfectly at 12 o'clock, make yourself a pie shape or a pizza shape cornerstone. Or keystone. Well, here it's a keystone. It's not a cornerstone, but it's a keystone. And put the middle name or initial into that keystone. What is that thing? What is that keystone?
Okay, got it. This is going to get hard and fast with people, so pay attention. Key, Greek letter shaped like an X. You have chi rho, which is Rome. Rho being spirit breath, and the key, which is a double cross. When you put an X in the mirror, it is the opposite, right? But think of it in terms of the keystone or the life stone. Ki, chi, in Asian is life, right? So I just want to make sure that people are listening and seeing outside of the box here, and how critical listening to Phoenician law and what it's all about. This is unbelievable. Keep going, Kurt. Keep going.
And I want to build on what you said before I finish up. The X, the Greek X, is also, it's chi as well, and that's the vital essence. That's called vital. And also the X, which is this is all going to fit together, folks. Just hang in there. The X itself, the St. Andrew's X or cross, is actually the sigil of Spain. When you look at the Spanish flag, the Spanish Empire, it's the red St. Andrew's cross, and so just keep all this in mind as I keep going. So where was I? I was talking about the arch. I'm drawing a picture of you for you're gonna finally see who your arch enemy is. So I have Curtis on the left, Kallenbach on the right, and in my pie shape at 12 o'clock that cuts right in the middle of this. Is the middle name. What is the middle name? Well, first of all, around 1900, the middle name didn't really exist. In Roman times, the middle name means something, and I'll explain that real quick. But the middle name never existed in America until around 1900. Why did they introduce the middle name then? Why did they create the middle name then? Because they needed the keystone, the philosopher's stone, the lens through which the light shines upon. Here we go. So if you got your picture of your arch there, Curtis is the given name in most people's minds. It's the proper name. In fact, it's the only name. Kallenbach, the surname, is the family. What's funny about the keystone is it separates Curtis from his family. It separates, it divides, it's a wedge between the two. But it's also holding together those two to create, through alchemy, through a form of alchemy. Now it has Curtis Richard Kallenbach creating an entirely different character. It's not so it divides Curtis from Kallenbach as well as holds it together in a new alchemical form. This is your arch enemy. This is your antithesis. This is the opposite of being. In fact, when you hear to be or not to be, this is the not to be. This is your arch enemy. Curtis Richard Kallenbach is the arch enemy of life. It actually is death. In fact, if you think of the arch, it's the same damn shape as a tombstone. So take Curtis Richard Kallenbach off the top of that arch and put it in all caps on it, and you got yourself your tombstone. Curtis Richard Kallenbach is the dead entity. It has nothing to do with me. In fact, the key, the chi, the X, the middle ground. Look at this. Hey man, can't we find some middle ground? I would prefer not to. The middle ground is the problem. The middle ground is the middle name. The middle ground is the bad. The middle ground is the problem. Here. Let me finish.
Hello.
Okay. Actually, Kurt, while we got this going here, and this goes right back to the Judge Bows to Sovereign video, because the name that I referred to, this is the previous boy name, was actually my middle name. It wasn't it was used as my first name, but it was actually categorized as the middle name. So when I gave that name, this is another factor that comes into play here in that same video. It was the middle name. I at that time I said Keith, just Keith, nothing more, nothing less. Right? And you've probably seen the video, but I just thought it was that you're bringing up the middle name thing, and I was just trying to see how that would have played a role in what happened that day as well. And of course, everything does, all things for a reason.
Well, I'm going to be all over the place on this because I'm surrounding all the same stuff. What else? What is the middle name? How many times when you're talking about somebody being the mark, what does that usually imply? It usually implies something bad, like they're the one they're the ones that are in the sights of somebody trying to do something nasty to them. Well, here's Black's Law. The term is mark. Black's Law, 5th edition, page 874. Mark, M-A-R-K, and this has a direct relationship to the middle name. And you got to see this. Mark, a character usually in the form of a cross, made as a substitute for his signature by a person who cannot write in executing a conveyance, will, or other legal document. Now I'm going to describe how do you make a mark. Oh,
and Kurt,
yeah.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I want people to know this. If someone if you're going to get a mortgage, think back to when you got mortgages and loans. Was there an X on that line already? And the answer will always be yes, there was. So it was already signed.
It was already signed. All you're doing, remember,
underwriting it.
You're underwriting it. You're the guarantor. You're actually the surety behind it. Okay, here we go. Mark. How is a mark? But remember, it says a character. A character right off the bat. It says it is commonly made as follows. A third person writes the name of the marksman, leaving a blank space between the Christian name, first name, and surname, last name. In this space, the latter traces the mark, or crossed lines, and above the mark is written his, and below it, mark. It could be her as well. But see, what they've done is they've created a cross, a crossing. So between Curtis and Kallenbach, they place the mark. And in fact, whatever is in the crosshairs, the mark itself, that is the mark itself. That is the target. That is the mark. That is the Philosopher's Stone. That is the window through which the light shines. That's the watermark. That's the identifier. That's the flag. That's the banner. That's the sigil. That's the thing that shows them who you are. That's your colors. Name it. That's what that is, showing your allegiance. That's the mirror out there at sea, flashing, saying, "Hey, I'm one of you guys." That's what the middle name is. The middle name is a claim to a place. Now let me go Roman on you. Here's the Roman concept of a name. I don't like using first or last, but Curtis, in Curtis Richard Kallenbach, is called a praenomen. Curtis is the praenomen. It's the name of the individual. Don't confuse individuals on your 1040 forms for the IRS. That's a different individual. Curtis is the individual name. It's called a praenomen, and it's also called your proper name. Now, in the second position, and I got to be clear about this, Kallenbach, Curtis Kallenbach in the second position is the family name. In the Roman times, it's called the cognomen. So you have the praenomen and cognomen, and that is it. That's the individual within a family. That's how that lays out. But what happens when I put a name like Richard in the second position? I have now changed families. I've moved Kallenbach to third position and created a title. So I got Curtis Richard Kallenbach. And what is Richard? Richard now is in a position of the family name. Well, who the hell what family does Richard belong to? Richard is the pledged name, the baptismal pledged name to the Society of Jesus. That is the pledge. That's the ancient pledge that what's his face talked about. Mandel House. Mandel House talked about the ancient system of pledging. They capture all of us with the claim upon the pledged property, the baptismal name. What is the baptismal name? To be specific, it's the middle name, and that's the pledged name. That's the pawn in the entire system, and it's also it's the lens through which they see you. And I believe it's also called the Philosopher's Stone or the Keystone, but I believe that's the very thing. That's the one that's the time travel piece. That's the one when they look through that lens, they're looking back in time. They're looking back in time through the middle name, through the middle. It could be a middle initial too. So the sad part is the whole concept. If I take
musical show tonight.
Yeah, I like that. So and let's go. Let's just. What is legal name mean?
Long talk right now.
Some things just never change.
Yeah. so let's be clear about this. What is a legal name? A legal name, a common law legal name, consists of what? It consists of one Christian name, and that it just don't. The word Christian can be irrelevant right now. One Christian name and one surname, and the insertion, the omission, or the mistake in middle name or initial is immaterial. So in other words, to be a common law legal name, there can be no middle name at all. All the shit in the middle is material. And it can't have any material between Curtis and Kallenbach in order to be a common law legal name. So any usage of any middle name whatsoever is a non-common law legal name. Now let me just tell you what the rest of it is. So if you're using a legal name that has a middle name or middle initial, it's a different set of rules. In fact, when you walk in there and you claim the middle name, the baptismal character, you're working specifically with the ecclesia, and you've abandoned common law. In fact, I'm piling on here if you guys don't mind. In fact, the federal rules of civil procedure, which are in all of those courtrooms, the common law has been abandoned because nobody uses the common law legal name. Well, they can't because there's already another claim upon it. But the point is that the federal rules of civil procedure do not allow, you guys will appreciate this, a prayer which is known as a plea. You cannot make a common law plea because you don't have access to a common law legal name. Because of the middle pledge name, the baptismal name, the existence of the baptismal name, the common law has been set aside. They call it the adoption of the federal rules of civil procedure. When you claim Curtis Richard Kallenbach, the baptismal name, you have adopted a legislative article or a statute as your existence. So there is no common law for you ever. You don't even kid with yourself. The common law is out the window the moment you claim the baptismal name, because that's an adoption of the federal rules of civil procedure automatically. That's why nobody. In fact, the joke is you don't have a prayer. Prayer means a plea. You don't have a prayer when you're using the baptismal name. It's kind of an oxymoron, actually. You'd think that if you have the baptismal name, you would have a prayer, but you don't have a prayer when you use that name. So, where was I?
Having fun. That's where you were.
So, should I continue with the or should I? What I'd like to do right now is go right to the birth, so they can see how this is starting to connect.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, the birth. First of all, the word birth. Everybody right now in their minds, I'm sure of 100% of everybody is going, "Wow, that's an event." It's the birth of... No, it's not. It's a place.
Location.
It's a location. It's a site. S-I-T. It's the situs or situs. It's the site of something. It's the location. The birth is a place where something was put. And so the birth certificate is evidence of ownership or what have you of that place. It's actually a grave site, a tomb, a sepulcher, a vault, the catacombs. It's all of those things, but I'm going to get into that in a second. So let's explain birth real quick, or the idea of birth, and so everybody can see how what I've already spoke of earlier starts to fit together. Mom goes into the hospital. Of course, all hospitals are owned and operated by the Knights of Malta, who just celebrated their 900th anniversary, I think, recently. Didn't they, Santos? Something like that?
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the Knights of Malta Hospital. Mom goes into the hospital, and she has this wonderful spiritual being, this wonderful spiritual essence that she's about to bring into the reality. Now, here's what's funny. The essence, the child itself, is surrounded by the amniotic sac, which is hooked into everything through the placenta. The amniotic sac itself is the vehicle or the ship or the vessel that this alien being is arriving in. So when this being finally comes out, comes through the water of the mother, the being him or herself disappears. It just goes. There it goes. It goes away because there's no evidence of the existence of this being. Here's what I'm getting at. When the child is actually born, it exists in reality. But what happens is then the vessel, the ship, the vehicle that this being arrived in, the afterbirth, falls to I say it just falls to the floor. Well, what they've done, what every hospital has done, is taken the forms that mother has filled out as the informant or informer, taken these documents and applied the document, in my case, Curtis Richard Kallenbach, this document applies now to the afterbirth. The afterbirth. So Curtis Richard Kallenbach is the title to the afterbirth. It is not my name. In fact, when you think about it, everybody talks about this character is a decedent, a dead thing, a dead whatever. Yes, it is. The afterbirth is what has been given the title. The afterbirth has what you think is your name. And so when you go into court, you're dealing with people and they go, wow, this another nutcase, another lunatic, another person that's completely off the wall is standing before us because they're claiming to be dead. They're claiming to be the afterbirth. Now, they know it. They know something's wrong. You don't know it. You think that that's your name. But the hospital administration takes the paperwork and applies it to the afterbirth. That being said, what happened to the being? Well, remember, this is a baptismal process. They have now separated the spirit, the actual I am, the soul-filled manifest essence of the I am, which is gone now because it's in the arms of mom, but it doesn't have a name, it doesn't have a title, it's just I am. It's in real time, it's in reality. But they got documents that place the afterbirth 3,761 years in the past as of that moment. And so Curtis Richard Kallenbach, born to the Anno Domini calendar, and the afterbirth, which is what it is actually back there in time. And here we go. 3,761 years ago, at Swedish American Hospital in Rockford, Illinois, none of the Swedish American didn't exist. Rockford, Illinois didn't exist, but the Americas did. So this child is an indigenous person of the Americas. So.
And Kurt, I got to say, you look great for your age.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're looking at my photograph right there. That's.
Well, no, it's 30. What is it? 3,600, 3,700 years old. You look great.
I'm 4,014 years old apparently.
Oh, there you go, and dead no less. That's pretty.
Yeah. Well, so the whole idea is that what they've done is they've created a partnership in your DNA. They've created a partnership. You don't even know that this happens. Remember, one man's trash, the afterbirth, is another man's treasure. So what they have is they have a title and they have the afterbirth. And so think of it this way: the title is the character of the story, of his story. So the title is the character of his story. It's the subject of his story. So Curtis Richard Kallenbach is the subject of his story or history. The afterbirth is the matter of the story. So the combination of the spirit, subject, Curtis Richard Kallenbach, and the afterbirth DNA is the matter. So you put those two together, and what do you have in your cause of action? The subject matter. So when you show up in court and you're there physically in reality, and you're actually expressing your DNA right before the judge, they now have your spirit, you, and the subject matter, you, standing before them, and now they have joinder, subject and matter, because you're both at that point. But they're your silent partner. They have a stake in your DNA. So now, a free man, a truly free man, would not have anybody own any aspect of his existence. Well, they now lay a claim through the manifest. Remember, the ship that you arrived in, the vessel you arrived in, was left behind. It was picked up as salvage, for crying out loud. I mean, actually picked up as salvage. Later to be insured by Lloyd's of London. But the point is they now have a salvage claim, and this is something a buddy of mine said the other day. He said whose father actually won a silver medal in sailing in 1954, so he knows nautical stuff. He says, Kurt, you realize that because the character, this character was born 3,761 years in the past, all statutes of limitations are gone. So the concept of salvage becomes even more relevant. So think about this. So the vessel that crashed ashore of the Americas in 1960, in my case, the vessel, the actual captain of the ship, the spirit of the ship disappeared. That's the I am. That's actually me. I disappeared, and there's no record of my existence. See, I am. There is no record. Expressly and completely for the DNA afterbirth. I'm going to do one thing, and then I'm going to take a breath and let you guys kind of talk a little bit.
I was going to say that again because you broke up there for a sec.
Which part? The afterbirth?
Yeah, just that last little segment. It was the last sentence you said there had broke up before you said you were going to let us talk.
Oh.
I know, it's, the afterbirth and...
So all I really want people to realize is that the spirit, the I am, is the subject. Curtis Richard Kallenbach actually is the subject. And I mean, even what's out there, and then the physical DNA is the matter, and you have a silent partner that is laying claim. You don't even know it exists, and I believe the silent partner is I'll get into that in a second. It won't make sense until I actually do something else. Here's what the hell was I going to say? And it was very poignant right here.
Well, again,
I know it. I got it. Okay, so this is an analogy that people, once they hear this, they'll understand how it all works now. You go into your barber shop or your hairdresser, and you want to do something. You want to make a big change, and it doesn't matter how long your hair is. Say, I'm looking for the Sinead O'Connor look. I want to look like The Rock. I want to look like, I want a shaved head. So they take and they shave all your hair off, and it falls to the ground. Now here's the thing: you look in the mirror and you're all pumped, you're stoked, you think you look great with the bald head. You pay the man, you pay the woman, and you walk out of there all bouncing because you're happy with your new look. Well, here's what's interesting: the hair that dropped to the floor, who owns that hair? That's a question. You don't even have to. I mean, just think about that, because here's what happens. Does the barber or the hairstylist own the hair? Probably not. But what about the owner of the building? Think hospital. The owner of the building can lay claim to the scraps. Remember, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So they lay claim to the hair on the ground. Now, they can bundle all that hair up and call it a wig and sell it for profit. Or they can take each individual strand and sell it, assuming they can find a buyer. If they can find a buyer for each individual strand, they could make a fortune. Well, think of each individual strand as derivatives. So they think about now think about your DNA laying on the floor back at the hospital. They take and sweep. I call it the floor sweeps, the DNA floor sweep. They sweep up your DNA, what they presume to be abandoned, and they take it for themselves. One man's trash is another man's treasure. They take that DNA, and it has a title. But remember, Mom and Dad Kallenbach, they take this new being home with them, and they're so happy with it, with the fact that this is a wonderful, beautiful baby boy, which he really was, by the way. Anyway, they take him home, and then a few days later, there's an announcement into the newspaper. Hey, look at this! Richard and Marianne Kallenbach had a 9-pound, 3-ounce baby boy. They announced the what you call the birth into the newspaper. It's a birth announcement, but it's two other things as well. Number one, it's the hospital looking for the owner of a loss of something that had been left behind, a lost something or another. So here, it's their effort when they say, hey, look what we found. I mean, you got to really start to think about this, folks. The announcement into the paper is the effort of those holding your DNA to pretend that they're looking for the owner. But of course, everybody out in the real world says, hey, look at there's an announcement of the birth of Marianne and Richard's son. No, that's so now they've done everything they could to find the owner of the DNA, but nobody showed up. Nobody showed up to claim it. Nobody showed up to claim the title. So the announcement becomes their what would you call it? Probably their defense that they made every effort to find the owner. But there's another thing that's even more sinister, is that announcement is also the announcement of a DBA, or doing business as. That's the new business. That's a new commercial entity. Curtis Richard Kallenbach announced into the paper is also the DBA, the announcement of the new commercial entity. So you got two things going on with the very same thing. And finally, I'll say this. There's another aspect to this publication. When that name is published into the newspaper, it's also called a libel. And if you look up libel, especially Santo, somebody like you, when you realize that accusation, a libel is an accusation. And when you go from libel and you chase that around a little bit through Black's Law, you get to the word, and you get to this word right here, and it only takes 3 steps. It's only 3 times removed, but the word is article. So the article that is actually published into the newspaper, I'm going to read this because this is actually what happens. So the informant mother, when this thing goes into the newspaper as both a DBA and their effort to locate the true owners of whatever was left behind, this is what's actually happening. It turns into this here, an article. Here it is, article, and this goes directly to the what happens with the church and what they start to do. Article, a separate and distinct part of an instrument or writing, one of several things presented as connected or forming a whole. Let me say that again. One of several things presented as connected or forming a whole. One of something forming a whole. A particular object or substance, a material thing or class of things, material or tangible object, and here's the key. In English ecclesiastical law, a complaint exhibited in the ecclesiastical court by way of a libel. That's the publication of the name of that child in the newspaper. It's a libel. It's an accusation. It says the different parts of a libel, responsive allegation or counter allegation in the ecclesiastical courts. That's the crime, folks. That's the initial crime committed by the parents abandoning their child. That's because the parents never went back and picked up the DNA, picked up the title. So this child was abandoned, left abandoned, and what did the state do? The state then laid claim to this abandoned child, whether it's the title or whatever you want to. Remember, the DNA represents the child. The title is the title. So nobody comes and claims this. The state takes it. They call it abandoned. They made every effort to find the owner, and what happens? They pick it up through eminent domain, and now the state, of course, we know the state since 1864 was the District of Columbia. The state lays claim to the title and the DNA. So now, I always thought that this was only a slave state by our claim upon the title. No, this is an actual slave state. And
well, it had to be toto genre. That's the full character. So what this is bringing is a few of the dots together to show how. For me, this is all allegorical, but it totally it makes very physical all of the things we've been talking about. Yes, absolutely. The ship that we arrived in was abandoned. So we effectively abandoned ship, and it was left floating on the seas of Admiralty allegorically, and they just claimed it as salvage.
There's something else about what you just said, though, Kate. It's this. When Curtis, remember, Curtis is the proper name. When Curtis was nowhere to be found, in other words, Curtis is the only thing that ties me, the I am, to any of this. And Curtis is my proper name. So Curtis, think about Curtis Richard Kallenbach. The moment Curtis disappears, because that's who disappeared, what's left? The secret agency known as Richard. So the captain of the ship basically jumps ship, but what's behind him is a second in command, or Richard. Richard takes the position of now the captain of the ship. And who's Richard? Richard is of the family of the Catholic Church. And now they have control of the ship, the vessel itself. So Curtis, the proper name, the captain of the ship, the actual owner of the property, he disappears completely, I hate to say through his mother's legs and out into the world of I am, of present tense reality, but that's what happens. But what's left behind is the secret agent. This is that secret agent man that you hear about in the old songs. This is the secret agent of the crown. The secret agent.
Blue Sky Bonds, look it up. Blue Sky Bonds 007 is actually a website.
Yeah. Well, that's why when they call, look at this. They take James and they take the word Bond.
Yeah.
James Bond. So the second name, the second degree, the second position is actually, again, it's the keystone that is the bond. It's the bond. You know, you had the Iron Age, the all these different ages. Well, we're in the bond age right now. The bondage.
Bondage, yeah.
Yeah.
Bond, James Bond, 007, License to Kill. Yeah, just not too many clues out there.
I'm gonna throw something out real quick just for fun because then this is a lot of stuff, but I want to do something right away. Everybody's wondering. I mean, as crazy as this, some of this stuff, it doesn't sound crazy to most of you people, I'm sure. But here's the thing: I have now located where the title is, and I've located where the remainder or remains. Now the title is Curtis Richard Kallenbach, and the remains is the DNA, the left behind, the floor sweeps that the hospital registered with this title. Now we got two separate things here. We have the subject and the matter. Where is the subject located? The subject is located in the Library of Congress. That's where that book is. You call it a file. Hey, single file, everybody. I mean, that's where the file is. That's where, you know, in the Matrix when what's-his-face sets down that file in front of Neo, that is the book. That's the file. That is the record that is in the Library of Congress. And who runs, if anybody's seen the movie The Game, what is the name of the company? It's just three initials. What is the name of the company that created the game in that movie with Michael Douglas?
CRS, I believe.
Yeah, it's Congressional Research Service, and they're the ones that provide Congress with the title. With anytime they need more money, all they have to do is go to the Library of Congress through the company called CRS. They're the ones that actually create the ability for Congress to get loans and everything else against who?
Oh, the pledges.
Against the pledges.
Now, I want you to make sure that everyone knows where the Library of Congress and the other building are located. They would be located in the 10 square miles known as
the District of Columbia.
Columbia, that's right.
And so I've already told people where this file is. Well, there's another there's the matter. What about, that's where the subject is, but where's the matter? The matter is in underground, one nation under God. It's actually underground in a tomb of all the sepulcher. Like I said, it's actually a gravesite, and this gravesite is in. First of all, it's under the authority of the Department of. Oh, what is it? The Department of. I sent a letter to this woman. I'll think about it in a second. Anyway, so the remains or remainder. I know that all of you people listening have run across the word remainder. Yeah, all over the place. The remains are located in the Smithsonian Institution. So, and remember, this is a place where all kinds of history is always, you know, I mean, when you think of movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark and all that stuff, it always ends up at the Smithsonian Institution. Well, remember, the Curtis Richard Kallenbach, those remains are 4,000, right now they're 4,014 years old. They're 4,014 years old, and they're located underground in the vault at the Smithsonian Institution. Now I'm going to describe time travel to you. After all of this other garbage I just said, what is the true time travel I'm speaking about?
Okay, and just to clarify for everyone, you could take your typical coffee can, the large coffee can, and you could put the DNA, it could be a lot smaller, but I want to make it reasonable. You can put the DNA of everyone on this planet in a coffee can.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted people to get the idea that it's not buckets and buckets of placentas and hair and stuff. Okay? Because, they get the deed poll with the footprint. Of course, I want to cover that as well. And of course, they want to take blood from the soul of the child of the divine feminine, which is the left foot connected to the right hemisphere, divine feminine. It's all magic, and this is why people really need to get outside the box. So hit us with some time travel.
This is the coolest thing of all. And again, we got to have a visual. Wherever anybody's at, just picture yourself out in your front yard, assuming there's grass. I just want you to put yourself in a park, because parks are they control all the sound areas anyway. So put yourself in a park somewhere that you can actually visualize. And here you are. You're standing in a beautiful park today, right now. I am. This is real time. You conjugated the verb to be, and you are right now. Well, guess what? 6 feet under you, just pretend you're standing in the park at the Smithsonian Institution, and 6 feet under is the remains or remainder of Curtis Richard Kallenbach. Put your name in there, or your baptismal name in there. So underneath me, 6 feet away, I'm standing here in real time, in the Anno Mundi calendar, 5774. I'm standing here in real time, Anno Mundi, 5774. Are the remains of Curtis Richard Kallenbach that are 4,014 years old. Here we go. If I want to travel backwards in time, all I got to do is travel down through the dirt in a wormhole down to the grave itself, down to the remains. If I want to travel forward in time from my status as Curtis Richard Kallenbach, I can travel forward in time by going up through the dirt to 5774, where I am now standing above, on the ground. As above, so below. You got this? As above, so below. So the remains are underground in a vault. It is a grave site, folks. It is a grave site. And
I was wondering when that was going to happen.
Yeah. What happened?
Oh no, you just dropped. Oh, sound like you dropped off there. Somebody dropped off.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, that's better. Yeah, you were cutting out a little bit, so just be mindful of that, so I can get in to let you know, so we don't lose the train of thought that you're on. So carry on.
Let me go back to so I'm standing again. I alluded to it earlier today, but as I'm standing in this field above the remains in real time, according to the World's Elite, Anno Mundi, 5774. In fact, I'm going to go right now back to the Hebrew calendar, and here I am. Right now, the remains of Curtis Richard Kallenbach are underground, and the date for the remains is the 4th of November, 2013. But as I stand in the grass above the remains, it is the 1st of Kislev, 5774. Two different worlds, completely separated in both time and space. This is the craziest shit of all. I'm just going to have one fun thing here, because I'm going to throw a lot of pieces out, and people are going to they're going to pick them up, and like here we go. And I'll ask you guys directly. Here's a good one. Where was we've all heard this? If we're old enough, we've all heard this statement: one small step for man, one giant leap
for mankind.
Okay. Well, what is that in reference to?
Yeah, wasn't that Louis Armstrong that said that? No, I'm kidding.
No, it's right after he got done playing.
Yeah.
Neil Armstrong. When we hear that, if we're old enough, we actually picture that footprint on the moon. That's what we picture. Well, guess what? Where was your first step taken? Well, most of everybody remembers the little baby footprint on the document.
We did the deep pole dance. Yeah.
That's right. But here it is. What does that document represent? Where did it come from, and whose is it? It's the Vatican's. And the Vatican's known as the lunar cult. The lunar cult. And that's one of its many names. But the lunar cult. So your first step is upon the property of the lunar cult, or better, if you really want to think about this, your first step was on the moon. Now, what's funny about that is that now you're completely lost in a prison system, a camp, let's say, and it's a good word, by the way, camp. You're in a prison camp in 2013 on the lunar surface, which also makes you a lunatic, by the way, which is why you need an attorney, because they can only deal with what? Lunatics, infants, and indigents. So you're a lunatic, and which allows the attorneys to work with you because you're part of the lunar cult. And so your first step is actually on the moon, believe it or not.
Well, that makes sense. The allegory of Men in Black 3, the really nasty guy had to escape from the prison on the moon. So all these things are clicking together.
Oh my God, I never thought about that. I never thought about that.
That's how I see things. I only see allegory.
I'll do one more thing, and then let's
Sure.
Here we go.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the national treasure. The national treasure is the combination of the title located and the DNA remains at the Smithsonian Institution. It's a combination of those two. By the way, what's interesting about the Smithsonian is, you'll never guess who is the chancellor of the Smithsonian Institution. John C. Roberts, who is the Supreme Court Justice. See, I know that in my research, I found that the Bar Association's number one job, and I'll send all these documents to you guys if you want to distribute them, but the Bar Association's number one job is to do what? Locate new intellectual property. Guess what? As soon as it's announced in the newspaper, they grab it up. So Kurt Kallenbach, the Bar Association grabs it from everybody else has claimed it. It becomes an MBA, for business, a commercial business, by the way. So and remember, the whole idea is that the commercial underworld, the commercial top, the commercial name, the business name is tied directly to the commercial character, which is interred underground as part of the world of the dead. In fact, the whole time, everybody that's claiming this character is a zombie, a dead character, whatever. So the whole thing is kind of fun to think about. But here's what I really wanted to get to right now, is the concept of the cross itself. Think of a plus sign. Think of a plus sign. No other cross. Just think of a simple plus sign. The horizontal line is actually the horizon, and the vertical line above the horizon it signifies heaven, and the vertical line below the horizon signifies hell. Well, here's what's interesting about that: the as above, so below, and all that crap. Well, here's what they've done. They've created what they call the hero's journey. Christ, the sun, the light of the world, rises. It rises every morning. That's the birth of Christ every morning. Every single morning, every single day, the light of the world rises in the morning. And then at the end of the day, at set, the Christ dies and goes underground into the underworld. That character then is the commercial aspect. So we got the Christ. Well, in the old Egyptian idea, Osiris is the sun, and then Set is the underworld. Think about the concept of two separate worlds: the world of Janus, the Two-Face. Well, in the light of day, they know who we are. In the light of day, it's obvious. Yeah, go ahead.
Kurt, I was going to say, why don't you let Santo jump in here for a bit, just to help with that concept, I want to show people how everything is coming together. This is amazing. You know what I mean? Santo? There you are. Oh, no, we're getting tech difficult. Oh, we got bumped a little bit there. Sorry, guys.
I'm back.
Oh, we're all back. We got bumped. All right. So anyway, go ahead, Santo, and I got to pop away for a sec because I got something to do here. I'm not as mobile as I was, but Vindy's got the board for a few minutes. But yeah, jump on that, Santo, please.
Look, all I can add, I mean, Kurt's doing a great job himself, but all I can add is that Osiris, his son Horus would be more appropriate on the horizon rising at 6 a.m. and his opposer Set at the other end in Tishri. It's actually in Tishri where Set begins his domination. So it's interesting that you said, did you say we're at 1 Tishri 5774?
Oh, as of today? Yeah. Today is today's 1 Kislev. I'm sorry.
Of Kislev. Sorry. Yep. Sorry. But anyway, so Horus would be rising in the east in Aries. Aries arises, and opposite Aries, the judge, would be the scales, Libra, where Saturn exalts in the scales of Libra. And so he begins the part that you're describing in the underworld. Anyway, take it away.
Oh, it's already my turn? Yeah, so the Saturnian cult, the lunar cult, call it what you want. It's all there. And by the way, people need to realize that the Vatican, the Society of Jesus, the Anno Domini calendar, that's the parameters of Egypt. That's Egypt, folks. The Catholic Church is Egypt. We're wandering in the desert on a horse with no name. Think about it. We actually do not know who we are because we're claiming to be somebody we're not. So we've disappeared, lost in the desert. Here, by the way, here's what's interesting about your driver's license. The Department of Transportation, are they not, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but are they not don't they issue the driver's license? The Department of Transportation? Oh, am I lost?
No, I'd say they do, yes.
Okay, does anybody really want to know what transportation actually means? Here we go. Transportation, a species of punishment consisting in removing the criminal from his own country to another, usually a penal colony, there to remain in exile for a prescribed period. That is what the Department of Transportation is all about, folks. The character on that license, I mean, you got to realize that you're driving around a dead entity. You're an undertaker when you're on land, and when you go between the land and the court, when you go from the exiled island, which by the way is Puerto Rico for the Americans, when you go from that place to the court system, in other words, from bank to bank, which now you're the what would it be? The ferryman, and you have a license to ferry the dead back and forth across the river Styx. So the driver's license is actually it's the license between the world of the dead. It allows you to work on both sides of the banks, and that's key because the river is the commercial waters. And in some cases, you could look at them, the commercial waters are no different than the baptismal waters. So once you wade yourself into the baptismal waters or the river, that is commerce, that is, it's all Egypt. The Anno Domini character is wandering lost in Egypt. It can't get any simpler than that. And outside of that character, when the Bible says to come out of her, they're very specific to the Catholic Church. To come out of her is actually to come out of Egypt. Egypt is the Catholic Church. Egypt is the Anno Domini character. In my case, Curtis Richard Kallenbach, born September 19, 1960. That, when I come out of her, I leave that character behind. Now we're gonna get into the other thing later about the claiming of the DNA, because once you reclaim your remainder, you are now whole again. And now we're right back where the whole Toto thing that Kate was speaking about earlier. We need to reclaim the DNA in order to become whole and sovereign. I don't use that term lightly, by the way. I said it twice in the past, 2 years. But we become the sovereign that we always were the moment we reconnect our subject and matter and lay claim to 100% of the matter of fact. So, anyway, that's we can go wherever you guys want to go at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's mind-blowing. What's going on there, Kurt, is that the people... who usually turns up in court? It's someone who represents the Crown, is it not?
You mean the attorneys?
Yeah, well, in Canada and in Australia and the UK, I don't know about the United States. It's someone who represents the Crown, right? The bar.
Right, the bar.
Yeah. Well, the Crown is Kronos. Kronos is Saturn. Saturn is Satan, the devil. You've sold your soul to Satan, the devil. And because Kronos, their time, it's their system. And so when they turn up, the bar members, bar backwards would be rabbi, the children of Ra, that is Ra Kafar, the bankers. That's why Rockefeller is appropriately named, because he is the pharaonic banker to the world, and the Rothschilds as well. So when good old Pharaoh wanted to get some money, he would call his Ra Kafar, his chief banker. And so what they do is these rabbis, sons of Ra, they have temples. They're called courtrooms, and a temple comes from tempo, and tempo is time. And so they're playing with time in their little temples, you see. The priests of Baal is Saturn, Saturn is Satan. And so, we're playing the game of Satan. We've been warned Satan is the god of this world, and it is the god of this world, and it's Kronos, and it's the crown. And so, that's some warning to, freemen and such that are using intellectual property which belongs to Satanists, and how very dangerous it would be to be using their names on items like licenses and registered cars, etc.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go.
Okay, well, I want to, because of this time situation that you just described, remember that the character Curtis Richard Kallenbach, and of course everybody listening to this too, but Curtis Richard Kallenbach at 53 years old is actually 4,014 years in the past right now, Anno Domini. Now, what's weird about that is that character is on American soil 4,014 years ago. So when we get to court and they do what they call discovery, you think of the word archaeology now. What they do is they now found evidence of this character way back when, and think about the fact that this character is underground 4,014 years ago. Well, when the Americas existed back then, all that was here would be the indigenous people of the Americas. Well, we know them today in North America as what? The Native Americans, so to speak. Well, the Native Americans have a different... I mean, what happened to them when the Europeans got here, whenever they got here? They were what? They were put on reservations. That's what they did. They found a space for the Native Americans, the indigenous peoples, and they found a space for them. They call them reservations. Well, in 1913, they finally established a reservation for these indigenous people, such as Curtis Richard Kallenbach. In 1913, they created a reservation, but the masses don't know it. They think it's something entirely different. The reservation of which I speak is a federal reserve. The Federal Reserve is the reservation where the indigenous people, such as Curtis Richard Kallenbach 4,014 years ago, are actually entombed or located under the ground. So when you start to think of who has the allodium or the rights to the mineral rights to what's under the ground that was here prior to anybody getting here, well, the king in 1783, in the Paris Peace Treaty, the king laid claim to all mineral rights. Well, so if that's true, then England or France, they were all the same king for both places, they laid claim to the mineral rights. Well, guess what? The character Curtis Richard Kallenbach, located 6 feet under or whatever over at the Smithsonian, when they do their discovery, they find that character, and now it's subject to the mineral rights of the crown. And so they actually lay claim to it, but of course they already have claim to it because they have legal title, and they have the floor sweep, the DNA, in their possession already. Actually, they acquired it, and that's a key word here, acquisition. But and I don't know how they acquire it. I think that just through the registration process and stuff like that. Once I got onto this stuff, I ended up going in a different direction. But once I found it seemed pretty simple. But so you got to really envision that this stuff is in the ground. It's in the ground, and it's 4,014 years old at this point. So the people in real time, 5774 a.m., they're actually lifting this old material out of the ground like it's an archaeological dig. And they go, wow, look what we found. In fact, again, this is no different in all the cartoons when we were growing up. When the pirates were burying their treasure, what did they put on top to mark it?
An X.
An X. Right back to the whole thing. So X marks the spot of what? Of the valuable, of the very thing, of the national treasure. X marks the spot, and the X itself is no different than your tombstone, your gravesite. That X is where the treasure is buried, and all they got to do is dig it up.
And once they lay claim to that treasure, everything is connected.
Everything.
Yeah, that's why this thought hit me, and I had to get it back. So here it is. You see, when if you want to see the legal joinder they create with property in terms of homes and everything else, if they've laid claim to the DNA in this time jumping scenario, imagine when you're walking around your house and you're leaving your DNA everywhere, anywhere you go, anything you touch, skin flakes falling off. So your homes are littered with DNA that they can lay legal claim to.
And that's the sick part about it is there is a document that Peter actually sent to a bunch of folks earlier today, and it's pretty amazing about the claim upon the DNA. And actually, I wrote in my letter, in my constructive notice that I wrote, what I call this particular legal system, I call it a forensic justice. Forensic justice. And forensic actually means belonging to the bar. And that's what forensic means. People don't realize that forensic, legally, all it means is belonging to the bar. So a forensic justice system that uses DNA for everything, it belongs to the bar. But on a different note, I want to prove something to people, which it will probably sound pretty crazy, but everybody listening to this, if you think about what exactly does a dollar sign look like? In other words, the one backed by gold. And people say, well, they got rid of gold back in the House Joint Resolution 192 and all that stuff in 1933. No. The United States is still backed by gold. So what is the dollar sign look like? Well, it's an S with 2 bars through it, 2 vertical bars. Well, wait, how come on your computer right now, if you punch in your dollar sign, it's an S with 1 bar through it? It's because it's not a dollar. It's a Spanish peso. All the American people, the indigenous peoples, are actually being paid in pesos. The peso is what's being paid to all the American people. And so all these idiots out there that have never noticed the change. Remember, the silver pieces of 8, the pieces of 8 prior to the United States dollar, it was here before, and it's here currently. It's here now, no pun intended.
And they're all called real as well. Yeah. So there's your royal and all the rest of it. Everything ties together.
And your real estate. Anyway,
yeah.
So all Americans are being paid in pesos, And right now, if the peso actually was still tied to silver, that's a 60-to-1 ratio between gold and silver. Between the S with the 2 bars and the S with the 1 bar, that's a 60-to-1 ratio of losing ground, no pun intended. So the whole idea of this is that if the American people wonder why everything's falling apart around them, it's because they're earning pesos, for crying out loud. They're not demanding dollars, but how can they demand dollars when they're living through the indigenous American that is upon the soil 3,761 years in the past? See, that's the point. As hard as this is to figure out, the United States government is going to the banks. You know, when they want money, where do they go? They go down into the vault, within the boundaries of the Federal Reserve, which is the Native American reservation or the indigenous people reservation. Hey, I mean, when you sign a reservation of rights, do you think that's a smart thing? No, you're actually claiming to be the very thing that is imprisoning you. So the whole American idea is actually upside down and backwards. That's what it is.
Well,
it's upside down and...
Yeah, it makes sense for the Rothschild now as well, for the allegory of the name. When you flip that around, thanks, Shahida. She triggered something for me here. What we really are, the family name is Thor's child. They're claiming the child of God.
Oh, well, actually, that is true. Because
Thor, right? The golden hammer. Yeah.
Well, and here's what also happens is kind of interesting on a different level, is that the idea that everybody talks about, the Ten Commandments, any of the biblical people out there, here's what's funny about this, is in 1933, I'm going to bring in the Ten Commandments just for a second here so we can start to see some other parallels. When Aaron is at the foot of the mount, and Moses was up on top for too long, and the people were getting restless. They come up to Aaron and they say what? They say, man, the dude's been up on top of the mountain a long time. We're not sure if he's coming back. You need to make us what? A new idol. And so Aaron says, you know what? I don't know when Moses is getting back, so I'll be more than happy to help you. So Aaron says, all I need from all you folks, now think of House Joint Resolution 192 when I say this. He says, all I need you to do is what? Just give me all your gold, and I'll make you a new idol. And so in 1933, and I'm running parallel here at the same time, the United States government was turning it over. They were creating an exile for the entire population of America. They took and confiscated all the gold to do what? To make new graven images for all of us. So my graven image, the idol to which I worship at, the altar to which I worship at, is my commercial image, Curtis Richard Kallenbach. That is my coin. It's a phrase. Curtis Richard Kallenbach is the coined phrase that was given to me to work within this system. That is my coin. That is my gold coin. The United States fashioned a new gold coin for me. It's called Curtis Richard Kallenbach to use in the system that they created. That's my new idol. That's my American idol. So Curtis Richard Kallenbach is no different than what happened with Aaron when he created an idol for those folks. So this thing is so deep and so ridiculous that I hear all kinds of patriots saying, man, they have the right to coin money and they're not doing it. Yes, they are. You just don't recognize it. Curtis Richard Kallenbach is the coin that I use in this system. I can go and sign that name anywhere and get any X amount of dollars. All I have to do is sign for it. That's the coin that I use within the United States. So that's my idol. That's my graven image. You know what it all really, the worst part about it is, when I claim that idol, it goes directly against the church. So the church, what did they do? They created something on your behalf. So when you execute yourself, when you actually commit suicide through self-destruction by claiming to be the dead entity as opposed to the I am, what they do is they have to have a way to salvage you. So they actually created what you think is a birth certificate. Actually, it's a certificate of indulgence. So when you hang yourself on the cross, and the only way you can be redeemed is when the judge, through discovery, finds the insurance policy, the certificate of indulgence that can actually take you down off the cross. That is what you do. You volunteer the Christ character. You sacrifice yourself in that very courtroom. It's the passion of the Christ in the courtroom. And then the only way that you can be redeemed is if there's that insurance policy, a certificate of indulgence. What does the indulgence mean? Santos, it means what? It means pardon. That's all it means. It means a pardon. So the certificate of indulgence, the birth certificate, is a pardon of your sins that the church has laid, they get paid to do. Remember, when the Gutenberg Press was first created, what was the very first document that came off the Gutenberg Press? It was the Catholic Church's certificate of indulgence. They could sell indulgences right and left. Well, that's what do you think they're doing now? The birth certificate is your certificate of indulgence through the Catholic Church. Now I'll shut the hell up for a minute.
Hey, Kurt, what about what?
Uh-oh.
It's Kurt, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I can hear you.
Okay, so then going into court, then we would have to be under the Jesus system with the Bible under the Anno Domini. So we would have to deny this being our Lord, wouldn't we? Hence, to be able to escape from their clutches and deny Jesus.
Well, there's my document right here is kind of funny. I mean, here's what happens when you go into the courtroom. What they want you to do is sacrifice yourself for that character. In other words, put up or shut up. They want you to put a stake in the game. Well, that's kind of funny. The word stake also could be a memorial. It could also be the actual marker at the cemetery. So you stake your.
Oh, losing you. Stake your claim.
Stake. It's a card. It's no different than a card game where you have something. You actually have to have something at stake. And when you get in the game, you have to put something at stake. And what you put at stake is your very living essence. You're putting that at stake. And so here's what happens. This is really cool to me. And I found this the other day. I'm going to pull it up so I'm not talking out my ass here. Where is this thing? Here it is. It's my constructive notice. What's funny is, so when you go into the courtroom, what they're doing is they're coercing you to commit suicide. They're actually forcing you to lay claim to Curtis Richard Kallenbach or some derivation thereof. They say, you are this character. Because if I claim it, they actually can tap into the fund through the certificate of indulgence. They can actually start tapping into this trust that everybody talks about. Because that's God, I gotta hurry up and say this before I forget it. See, the Jesus character that you're living through is part of the New Testament. What does Testament mean? It means what the hell is it? Testament is a disposition of personal property. So the moment you claim to be the Jesus fish, all of your property goes into the New Testament. So all of your shit, everything you ever earn, for the rest of your life goes into a trust. Because that's your testament. There is no such thing as a will and testament anymore because these characters, they may have a will, but they don't have a testament because the New Testament is their testament. So they don't even have a choice. When you claim the character, the Jesus fish is yourself, all of your shit for the rest of your life goes into this trust. And the evidence of that is the British courts, the Chancery courts back in the mid-1850s, what did they say? They said that all of the wards of the church, everybody that's under the care of the church, under the dome and under the kingdom, whatever you want to call it, all the wards of the church, all of their usufruct, all of their productivity stays with the church wardens until they get out from under the roof of the church, until they get out from underneath the care of the church. All of your productivity goes to the wardens of the church until you leave their care. Well, all of the baptismal characters stay with the church in this 14th Amendment trust. Because the 14th Amendment is nothing more than an ecclesiastical trust, and it's actually a New Testament trust. That's not really what it is for the baptismal characters. Again,
and the word testament also lexigrams to statement or state of mind, right?
Right.
Testa of mind and state of mind. So the same letters, just play it around and start breaking you got to start, guys. Phoenician law, it's all in the phonics and it's all in bust the spells.
I love being here with you guys. No matter what. I mean, thank God. I guess I'm looking in the mirror now as I say
Well, thank you. Yes, indeed. I will thank you.
Yeah. As I look in the mirror. Well, that's the whole thing is they have us looking up. Uh-oh. Did I lose everybody?
No, you're there.
Okay. No, what they did is they taught us to look up and out as opposed to inward. When we look up and search for God or pray to God, we can't see into the souls of our neighbors. I mean, they have us looking away from ourselves and away from everybody that we're supposed to love, and looking up and praying to some invisible man in the sky or whatever the hell it's supposed to be, so we can never actually connect with each other. That's the whole system. Look into your neighbor's eyes, and you'll start to feel the presence of yourself. I mean, this is so reciprocal. It's so awesome. It's so beautiful when you actually look into and you actually connect that way. When you look into the eyes of somebody and they look away, it's because they can't stand the power of love. They can't stand it. It's too overwhelming. Anyway, I'm way off track. But look at this. I got to get back to this now. So you're standing in the courtroom. And the judge, the attorneys, they're forcing you to claim this character, this Anno Domini character. And when they do that, when you actually capitulate, when you actually admit to being that character through whatever stresses they place upon you, whatever threats they place upon you, you now have actually have committed suicide. You have traded the I am, present tense I am, for the past tense dead underground character. And here's what happens in the courtroom. I'm going to read this because it's so cool. This is right out of my constructive notice. It says, suicide is self-destruction, the deliberate termination of one's existence. That's absolutely what we do, but look at this. Interestingly, this is verbatim. I'm reading this off my constructive notice. It says, interestingly, assisted suicide is a Class 2 felony in the state of Illinois under Illinois Criminal Code of 1961, Section 12-34.5. It said, with similar laws in 46 other states. Here we go. It says, so I said, I myself think that if a man were to be coerced into representing a decedent child instead of his actual living state of being, thus forcing him to trade or stake his unique manifest essence, his DNA, his life, upon a dead or fictitious entity, all those who willfully participated in such a heinous criminal act, such as hospital doctors, nurses, administrators, judges, attorneys, clerks, reporters, bailiffs, etc., should be charged as assistants to a suicide and imposed with the maximum sentence allowable, or perhaps charged with criminal homicide or premeditated murder, because all of this stuff actually applies. So think about this.
Well, okay, hang on. Let's go to what it really means to be a presiding judge, right? The word "side" means to kill, C-I-D-E, as in genocide, infanticide, homicide. So what we have is a predetermined or a premeditated murdering entity. They tell you up front, presiding judge. So it's a pre-killing judge. So, I mean, I've watched these different little, would you want a judge sitting on the bench or presiding, right? And see, I get like way outside the box with language, because
you and me both.
It's all there. It's all right there if you can see it. So I just want to make that very clear, because what we're dealing with, again, this is the penultimate aiding and abetting via non-disclosure and deception of premeditated murder, fraud, slavery. I mean, you can go down the United States Code, Section 18, and tick every one of them off for these guys.
Well, but what have they done, though? What has the legislature been doing for the last 20 years but writing law against what? Against the thing that everybody wants to protect themselves from is, what is that? That's identity theft. Well, what's funny about that is you've been stealing somebody else's identity for your entire life. You're the one that can go to jail right now for the better part of 10 years anyway.
That is the basis of everything that I've been talking to people about, because it's like you were saying there, you've got Curtis Richard Kallenbach. I got your mom and dad's name, I get your mom's maiden name, your full name, where you were born, and your Anno Domini birth date, and I can order your birth certificate online and create identification with it. So we're all guilty at that level alone, and it's because that's such an accessible thing. You can order birth certificates online. All you got to have is, well, now it's like $100, $150 where it used to be 10 or 20, right? So they know this is how I see the game unfolding. They're making it more difficult for people to go and get their birth certificates. But it's right there. You can be one of 7.3 billion people on this planet, and look it up in Black's Law. The second half of under false impersonation is usually a law enforcement officer for the purpose of deceiving someone. That's in the actual Black's Law. They're telling you straight up that these law enforcement guys, anyone in law enforcement, it's in Black's Law. You are a criminal upon criminal. As a false impersonator, not only are you using a name that you're, of course, dead, we got the DNA proof for that, You're out of time, out of code, and then you throw on another name and another title and an office. You know, see, these guys are, and this is what frustrates me the most, is these guys are not only coming after their own teammates, us, but they are in 3 and 4 times deeper, and we're trying to get them out of it. You know, because you got these people walking around repossessing, I love the word, repossessing homes and cars and you name it, and they think they're doing their job, but at the end of the day, they are just as liable to have that happen to them. So it's a very thin veil that these dogs that go fetch treats for their masters, bankers, and whoever else. You know, it's here it is. If you do your job well, we promise to kill you last. Okay, boss. You know.
Well, let's go back to something so people can understand. Claim one man's trash is another man's treasure, and somebody lays claim to this DNA and then they attach what you think is your name to it. Well, here's what's weird about it. That particular child, the word child, child, the definition in the Catholic dictionary to child, everybody thinks they know what a child is. Well, in the Catholic dictionary, the word child means, this is the very definition, a representation in Christian art. That is their definition of child. That's the Catholic Church's definition of child.
And you can also pronounce it killed. C-H-K-illed.
Yeah. Well, it also has the C-H-I, which is the X.
Yes, exactly. The key, the chi, let's go letter by letter. C, the open letter of creation, note of love, 528 hertz, and the 432, right? You got H, which is the divine trinity, the twin pillars of Hercules united in the middle. It's also the capital H is the 7th letter, known as Eta, in the Greek alphabet, and of course the lowercase eta is N. N is a possessive letter in English, right? That's its only purpose. Its only function is to create an ownership. So we have CH, and then you got I, which is the lowercase, all right, which is the true definition of the I. You don't want to capitalize it and kill yourself and turn it into money, right? L, the power of spirit. D, which is the 4th letter in both the Western and Greek alphabets. And, of course, D is delta, which is a triangle of the Holy Trinity. So you see all of these magic sigils getting pulled together into one spell. And then let's bring in the phonics. Let's bring in Phoenician law. You got, child, killed, chilled, keeled. It's crazy, but that's what happens when you break all the rules. Because if I was God, and I am, that's what I would do.
well, I know that most people when they think about the concept of Immaculate Conception, I'll tell you what, I'll prove that Curtis Richard Kallenbach is the Jesus character, is the Christ. Here it is. That character was created through an author, the hand of my mother. All she did was put pen to paper and created Curtis Richard Kallenbach. But of course, who was actually creating another character that was already in the story? Well, here we go. There's 2 things I want to cover real quick. One of them is the original sin, but this one here I want to get out of the way first. Immaculate Conception. The Catholic dictionary, the definition to Immaculate Conception is immaculate, perfect conception idea. So an Immaculate Conception is nothing more than a perfect idea. I would say this is about as perfect as it gets. But what about the virgin birth? The concept of the virgin birth. How come Curtis Richard Kallenbach is of the virgin birth? Well, first of all, there was no biological matter or material that was used in creating it. It didn't take an egg. It didn't take any sperm. There was no biological matter whatsoever that created Curtis Richard Kallenbach. That character was born of a virgin, and that happens to be the Church, which is Mary. So, and since it was a bastard, since it was it was a fatherless child. It was the father of the Church took it over. Absolutely took it over. So now I'm going to go into original sin so you can see how this all plays out. So Curtis Richard Kallenbach has no biology, had no semen, had no egg, had no nothing. This is a child that was created by the Church itself. And remember, child only means representation in Christian art. So what am I going to get at now with the original sin? Let's go back to original sin. Remember, everything I say is literal. It's literal. It's the written word or of the word. So here we. By the way, my word. If my word is my, this is an aside. If my word is my bond, guess what? Remember, I said Curtis Richard Kallenbach is the coin. It is also my word, and that is my bond. So by claiming Curtis Richard Kallenbach, I'm also bonded to everything that it's bonded to. So anyway, let's do one last thing here before I forget. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to do we're almost ready to roll into the recording here. For those that want to continue on listening, you can call in at 661-467-2401. And of course, if you're listening on Blog Talk, if your Skype button isn't there, just refresh the page, click on that, and it will bring you to the table. We have room for 7 people at the table right now. So
okay, well then let me finish with original sin, which is actually it'll actually close out everything on this anyway. Original sin. What is original sin? Original sin is basically the taking or eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. So if that's what original sin is. So all we have to do is break down legally what is the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Well, fruit is offspring, issue, child, whatever you want to say. It's the fruit. It's the product of something else. But let's just stick with child for now. Tree. What is the tree that they speak of? The tree is a family tree. It's a lineage. It's a succession. It's whatever you want to call it, but it's actually a family tree. And so what is knowledge? The tree. So you got the fruit of the tree of knowledge. You got a child within a specific family, or a better yet, a particular family. What is knowledge? According to Black's law, knowledge is the possession of information. Well, we know that Mom was the informant, and she actually created the very information that's used in every court of chancery and globally. And that information is Curtis Richard Kallenbach. So when I'm in possession of Curtis Richard Kallenbach, I actually have the fruit of a specific family. And what family is that? It's the family that created it. And what family is that? It's the Catholic Church. So by me possessing the baptismal name, I have eaten the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And what's funny about it is, in 1973, a movie came out called The Exorcist. And The Exorcist frightened people globally. It was such a frightening movie. But what they don't realize is that right at the very last moment, right before the exorcism,
okay, is it just me? Did Kurt fall off there?
I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, guys, we got bumped. So I'm thinking there's a good potential of this happening tonight. So we'll see how far we can get.
Am I back on?
Yep. And where did you leave off?
I'm closing up with this. The movie The Exorcist.
The Exorcist at the very end. Yes.
At the very right before the exorcism is to occur, the priest turns to Mom just outside the bedroom door and says, "What is your daughter's middle name?" And when he goes in there to exorcise or remove the demon from the girl, he calls it out by its name, and it is the baptismal name that the girl has been possessed of. So when we possess the name, when we possess Curtis Richard Kallenbach, we are possessed by it. And it's the Jesuit, when he removed the baptismal name from the girl was the Jesuit. It went back into the church, and the girl was left alone with just her Christian and surname. That's what exorcism is. Exorcism is you removing yourself from the baptismal name, but I don't think you can do that until you actually reclaim your DNA. That's the only way. I don't think any of this other shit matters even a little bit without the claim of the DNA.
That's the allegory, and again, it has to come back to the dead, right? We are the zombies, the walking dead.
Absolutely.
So it has to come back to that, and every one of these threads that we've all been working on connect right here, right now. So, nice try, guys, but boy, there's no putting this genie back in the bottle now, is there?